Welcome to The Brain Changers, a podcast about learning how to revolutionize the way you think and live by mastering your mind. We're your hosts, mother and daughter duo Rebecca and Yvonne King from Moonbeam Monday. Our goal is to empower you to live the life you choose by teaching you how to retrain your brain. Some people tell us it sounds like mind control, and it is, but not the way you might think. This is about you taking control of your own mind rather than letting your mind control you, so you can choose to live a life free from the expectations of others. No matter what you've experienced in the past, you can create positive change and transformation by learning how to master your mind. We know this because we've done it. Between us, we've survived cancer and stroke and eliminated debilitating anxiety and depression. We've turned our pain into purpose through the power of our mind, and we're now here to support and guide you to do the same. In this podcast, we share valuable insights about how your brain works, why you think, say, and do the things you do, how to begin the process of change, and why it's necessary. Because we know that when you change your mind, you change your life. Thanks for joining us. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Brain Changers podcast. My name is Rebecca King. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. If you've been listening for a while or you've been following Moonbeam Monday for a while, you'll know my mum's story. My mum, of course, is Yvonne King. And you'll know that she was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 5.5 years ago. And over the years, we've shared little pieces of that journey. But what you probably don't know is that she spent the last few years just quietly tapping away at a keyboard writing a book. And I've watched this book grow from the beginning. In fact, it began before she was even diagnosed. So the topic did change, but the intention did not. And I honestly think it's going to surprise people because even though it is written about her wellness journey, it's not really a book about cancer. So today, I thought we would have a conversation about why she wrote it, who it's really for, and what she hopes people take away from it. Mum, congratulations on writing your first book.
Thank you very much. And hello and welcome to everybody listening. Yeah, it feels a little bit strange, if I'm perfectly honest, Beck, because as I say, I've been tapping away at the keyboard for off and on for, the better part of the last 4 to 5 years. And now I've finally come up with something and it's basically finished and in the editing stage and about to be published and released early next year. So it is very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely is. I'm very proud of you for doing this. You said you were going to write a book. You've written a book. And as I said, your first book, who knows what will come after this. And it is something that so many people have on their bucket list. I know it's something I want to do as well. So very, very proud of you for achieving this so far.
Thank you.
And as I alluded to in the introduction, this is probably going to surprise quite a few people. So let's start with the obvious question here. People will hear that you've written this book after having cancer and probably assume that it's a bit of a memoir of your time with cancer. Is it?
No, the short answer is no, it's not really. Uh, my cancer diagnosis was certainly the catalyst for this book, but it really got me thinking about something or, going along a different track. Like so many people, when I was first diagnosed, I honestly thought that cancer diagnosis was going to be a death sentence. So I wasn't thinking about writing a book then or personal growth, nothing like that. What I was really thinking about was just surviving.
Mm.
But the thing that so many of us don't actually realise is that the medical system's really good at responding to a diagnosis like this, as treatment, surgery, all the rest of it. But then all of a sudden you're told that you're in remission and you think, I should feel fantastic.
Mm.
This is amazing. I finally made it. But the real surprise comes is that you wonder, well, what now? This diagnosis has changed me dramatically and totally. So who am I now? And what matters now? And how do I keep moving forward now when nothing looks like I thought it was going to look like? So what I realized that the hardest part wasn't really recovering physically, although that was hard enough,
Mm.
and that was pretty tough at the time, but eventually I got over that. What was the really hard part was learning how to rebuild my life. And I think anyone that's been through something like this will understand that one of the biggest components of that is the fear and uncertainty that accompanies that.
Yeah, I, uh, that's the thing about this, isn't it? I think we expect to, if we have an illness or disease or something major happen in our life, we kind of expect life to go back to normal. And
Mm.
of course, I'm using quotation marks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we think, oh, I'll just go back to my life or just go back to the way I was living before. But as you've said many times, and as you discuss at length in this book, life isn't the same. Like you never will be exactly the same as you were
No.
before. There are changes that you need to make. So that question, who am I now? What matters to me now is an incredibly important one, because it's like you're rebuilding. And I think that's what struck me while reading this book. I have been lucky enough to read the galleys, I guess, as they call them.
Hmm.
And a lot of people have been through something, whether it's like this or whether it's another illness, a chronic illness, whether it's a relationship breakdown, massive things in their life. They've had their life turned upside down. And I can really see them seeing themselves in these pages.
Exactly. Once I could move past the worst part of my fear, I began to realize that, okay, I'm not the only one that's ever gone through this. There are hundreds of thousands of other people that are faced with exactly the same situation every day. And it may not even be cancer, it might be a life altering event like maybe divorce,
Mm.
retirement, even,
Yeah.
or losing someone we love, or financial pressures. Um, it could be anything. And when we get to this point, we come to realize that really we've been living our lives on autopilot. And I think this is especially true of many women. Um, Women are incredibly good at caring for everyone else, but they become experts at knowing what their children want, what their partners need, what their parents need in terms of care. Yet somewhere along the way, they stop asking themselves what they need. And then when life forces us to stop, we suddenly have to come face to face with that question: what is my life about now? What exactly do I want?
Yes. And that is not a small question, is it? And this is something I know I see with a lot of the clients that come to me. We're all around a similar age. There is that point, whether it's like you say, from an illness or something else in life, or it might simply be that the kids have grown up and they're starting
Mm.
to, not need mum and dad as much as they used to. And we start asking that question, like that you said earlier: who am I now?
Mm.
What is it that matters most to me now? And of course, that question, if we've never really asked that question, if we've just gone along with what society expects or how we were brought up, what our parents wanted for us, then that can be quite a confronting question.
Yes, they can be. But I think what I gradually began to see and understand that, uh, talking in terms of cancer now, healing, there wasn't actually about becoming someone new. And this really applies to anyone that's gone through a major life change. Some of us think that we just need to improve ourselves. We need to be stronger or more confident, or we're looking for outside success. But all of these things are looking outward. And what I came to understand was that um, we really need to look inwards. We have to remember or come back to who we are underneath all the expectations we've been collecting throughout our life, just as you said,
Mm.
underneath, all the responsibilities we've taken on, um, perhaps all the habits we've developed throughout our lives, and most of all, through all the fear. And I think that many people are just so totally exhausted, not because they're doing too much, but because of all the conflict, they're living a life that no longer fits with who they've become. And there's absolutely no productivity app or nothing, no hacks that can fix that. The
Mm.
the real work is understanding yourself again.
That's interesting that you use that word conflict, and I think often we hear that word and we think of external conflict. We think of
Mm.
conflict in wars, or we think of conflict in terms of arguing with our partner, or our kids, or our friends. But actually, it's the internal conflict that you're talking
Yes.
about, isn't it? That
Yeah.
misalignment, if you like, that I want to be doing this or I want to be this person, but in fact, my behaviors are showing me that I'm a different person. So we're in
Yeah.
conflict with between what we truly want and what we're doing, the actions that we're actually taking. And you said there the real work is understanding yourself again. And I think that's a really interesting point that you made there, because I think this might actually be the first time that some people truly understand themselves. We talk about this a lot in the work that we do, teaching people why we think, say, and do the things we do,
Mm.
because I know, I believe, and we're on the same page here, that you can only make real effective lasting change if you understand what's going on in your brain and in your body, why or how it actually works. It's, I guess, if you're a clockmaker, you can only fix a clock if you understand the mechanisms behind it. And so
Mm.
it's the same with what we do. So, like you say, the real work is understanding yourself again. This may be the very first time for some people, but and that can be scary, right? That can be quite fearful. And one thing I really appreciated when reading this book in what you've written is that you don't pretend that the fear goes away.
No, I think I've really tried to be very realistic, and I know it didn't for me either, because one of the hardest parts for me was the middle of the night. We've all faced this. During the day, we can be busy, we've got things to do, practical things, and that's kind of like a bit of a distraction. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's nowhere to go with your
Mm.
fear, is there, and your thoughts. That's when your fear is loudest. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed something to anchor me to manage this. Otherwise, it was just going to overtake me.
Mm.
And a coach suggested to me that I listen to some hypnotic audio recordings, just like the ones that are available on our web page.
Mm.
So every night I'd put these on before I went to sleep, or when I woke up in the middle of the night, I'd put them on. I did that for a long time.
Mm.
Now, it doesn't take all the fear and the uncertainty away. And this is only one way that I manage this, but it was a pretty practical way for me to help me just stay in the present instead of living in all that terrible uncertainty
Mm.
or all those terrible futures that my mind was creating for me.
Yeah.
And it's still something that I do today because uncertainty, particularly for people that have had cancer or are still living with cancer, uncertainty is part of life. And it's actually part of life for all of us
Mm.
to one degree or another. So the goal isn't to eliminate it, but it's learning not to let that drive our decisions.
That's right. So in essence, taking back the control
Yeah.
ourselves, not,
Yeah.
having that conversation with our mind to say, look, I get what you're doing here. I understand that your job is to keep me safe. It's to keep me
Mm.
alive. But I hear you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I choose to think something different because, of course, what we think becomes reality. Where the focus goes, energy flows. There's a lot of lines that we quote around this, but if we can, or when we harness our thoughts and we choose the type of thing that we think, the direction that our mind goes, rather than going down that spiral that our brain is so good at going down, we can change the way that we change our state, we change the way that we feel, and that changes our behavior or the decisions that we make about
Yeah.
our behavior.
Yeah.
So, about the hypnotic audios, I mean, I'm a huge fan of those. That I credit the hypnotic audio that I listen to every night for 3 months as a big part of my journey in overcoming anxiety all those
Mm.
years ago. And it is something that I know a lot of our clients have had a huge amount of success with changing all sorts of things, from
Mm.
having the courage to stand up and speak in front of people, to overcoming what some might call an irrational fear of long distance driving, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely it is a fantastic tool because, of course, that is talking directly to our unconscious mind and, excuse me, essentially, excuse me, giving it a new story to tell.
That exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with your book, when somebody reads your book and finishes that last page, what is the one thing you want to stay with them?
Well, there's actually a couple of things, and let's just carry on a little bit from that thing that I mentioned about fear.
Mhm.
And like fear of the future is not the only fear that we have. What happens often when we are faced with a life changing event is that all sorts of feelings, emotions, beliefs start to surface. And fear is one of them. And what I talk about quite a lot in my book is learning to understand where these things come from. Because, as you said, when we understand the basis of these things, gives us a greater opportunity to change them. So I do talk about that a lot. I do talk in my book about what I've termed the Harmony Blueprint, which is a blueprint for helping us restore our life to harmony between everything we do. But I guess most of all, my book is about hope. Not the kind of promise that says life is going to be easy, everything's going to be okay.
Mm,
All still going to get surprises in life. And the reality is that for some people, um, their outcome may not be what they had hoped for. But the
mm,
thing is that all people can have choices. And this is what my book is about, in large part, that we can become more aware of how we're living. We can reconnect with what really matters to us. And importantly, we can begin trusting ourselves again. And these are the things that my book encourages people to stop and reflect and ask themselves these things. And importantly, who am I now?
mm,
And, you know, you touched on this, but instead of trying to become who they think they're supposed to be, then what we're really trying to do is become the person that we've always been, to come back to that person, to what really matters to
mm.
us and what's important and what our purpose is.
The ultimate purpose for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. I think this is why your book and the work we do fit together so naturally, because of course this, yes, it's specific, or you talk a lot about cancer, but as we've discussed, this could actually be relevant to so many people who haven't experienced cancer. It could be any life altering moment.
Absolutely.
But again, it comes back to, I love that you mentioned the harmony blueprint. And I know we use that word harmony because so many people say they're looking for, say, a work life balance.
Mm,
We hear that a lot, right? But balance suggests 50-50, that it's got to be equal. And, we've got to, it seems so precarious, doesn't it? But harmony suggests that it doesn't need to necessarily be 50-50. There's a certain rhythm that comes with harmony.
mm.
And you give such a beautiful blueprint in terms of how we can work to achieve that and all the different pillars that are required to
Absolutely.
find that
Yeah.
harmony in our life. Because, again, as we said earlier, before we can change our lives, we need to understand where we are currently, what's driving our decisions, whether
Mm,
we are actually living in alignment with what matters most. I know I feel like we're harping on about this a bit, but it is the most foundational part of this work and of making change in our life. And again, to
absolutely.
reiterate, it's not about what matters most to our parents or our friends or from society, but what matters most to us. And we know that for some, that will be a very confronting question and a hard one to answer to begin with. But it is the best place to start. We all know that we don't build a house without digging down, uh, building the footings, laying the foundational slab and letting it settle. If we don't do that, and of course, we come from the building industry, so we know that, but most people know that. You don't build walls and a roof before you have done that. And that is what understanding what's most important to us really is all about.
Absolutely. Mm,
So I've really loved hearing all about this. And I want to say to our audience, if it's just even one thing in today's conversation has sparked something in you, I'd love to invite you to join my upcoming challenge, because this is what it's all about. Over a few short days, we actually explore the beliefs, you mentioned habits, patterns that might be keeping you stuck, whether it's in life in general or after a life changing moment. And we help you create more clarity about where you are now and where you want to go next, and then how to actually how to start that journey.
mm.
So, if you're interested in doing that, if this is actually the time to do it for you, and don't ask yourself that question for too long. If you're even thinking about it, then it is time. Then just drop me a DM on socials. We are everywhere at Moonbeam Monday, or go straight to the website moonbeammonday.com.au and book a time there. It's free. We'll simply have a chat about where you are and whether this is the next step for you, the right next step for you. And of course, you'll find all the details in the show notes. And of course, now, Mum, your book isn't out yet. As you mentioned at the beginning, you're in the editing stage, looking at publish and release early in 2027, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah.
But if you would like to be among the first to hear when, I keep calling you Mum, but when Yvonne's book is released, please make sure you join our mailing list as well. And you can do this through the website moonbeammonday.com.au. So, Mum, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about your book today. As I said at the beginning, I'm very proud of you for attempting this and for sharing so much of your journey, which has been an incredible one. I know a lot of people are going to get so much out of this book. So thank you for sharing all of that
Thank
today.
you.
And thanks to our listeners. Once again, we love having you here with us on the podcast. We will see you next time on the Brain Changers podcast. And remember, until then, when you change your mind, you change your life. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Brain Changers. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation today. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Our mission is to reach as many people as possible to help them revolutionize the way they think so they can change their brain and create profound transformation. Please help us broaden our reach by sharing this episode with someone you know will benefit. And remember to tag us on socials at Moonbeam Monday and leave a review. And remember, when you change your mind, you change your life. We'll catch you next time for another episode of The Brain Changers.